Welcome back. The editor of the New York Times editorial page, his name is James Bennett. He has resigned after New York Times staffers objected to the Times publishing an opinion piece from Republican Senator Tom Cotton on using the military to back up police to stop rioting, arson, and looting and the destruction of businesses across the country. Also, now we've got a number of people dead, 18 people dead, 8 of them African Americans in the rioting. Let's welcome Kelsey Bolar of the Independent Women's Forum. Kelsey, your reaction to this? The criticism comes after the New York Times ran previous opinion pieces from American adversaries, including Vladimir Putin, Nicolas Maduro, and the Taliban. New York Times staffers didn't complain about that.
You are absolutely right to point that out. This is mob rule at the New York Times. Apparently, those op-eds from terrorists and dictatorships are not too much for these New York Times journalists to handle, but an op-ed defending United States law from a United States senator that 58% of the American population holds an opinion that Tom Cotton expressed. 58% of the American population holds the same opinion that he expressed in that column, according to a Morning Consult poll. Apparently, that's what is putting New York Times over the edge and causing this whole debacle. It's really another example of the left saying the quiet things out loud. We all have known about this media bias for years. Now we're seeing it play out with our own eyes.
You know, the New York Times also ran an opinion piece by the leader of Turkey, the strongman dictator there, Erdogan. He's the second worst in the world. His regime is the second worst in the world for locking up journalists. The Times ran an opinion piece by him. Okay, let's listen to Senator Tom Cotton now demanding the New York Times retract a, quote, smear that he says is false and offensive, that he did not call for the military to stop protesters. He called for the military to stop the rioting, stop the looting, stop the killing of people. Watch this.
I said simply last Monday that if the local police are overwhelmed by the numbers of these insurrectionists, if they need support from the National Guard, or if necessary as a last resort, federal troops under the Insurrection Act, then that's exactly what has to happen. Now, fortunately, that's what happened in most places over the course of last week. So what we saw yesterday was people exercising their First Amendment rights to demonstrate and to protest. But in the meantime, we published that exact argument in the New York Times. The New York Times editorial page editor and owner defended it in public statements, but then they totally surrendered to a woke child mob from their own newsroom that apparently gets triggered if they're presented with any opinion contrary to their own, as opposed to telling the woke children in their newsroom, this is the workplace, not a social justice seminar on campus.
You know, Kelsey, here's the thing. LBJ, JFK, also George H.W. Bush, when people were getting killed in rioting under their administrations, they did call in the troops. And so now we have New York Times staff writer Nicole Hannah-Jones on CNN yesterday saying that, quote, we do absolutely believe that his views should be aired. It's a different thing altogether than simply letting someone say things that are not true to make assertions that might be unconstitutional. She didn't stipulate what was not true and what was unconstitutional. But they ran it and they fact-checked it. They didn't have a problem. He says it was supported, and he is now we're hearing the Times put the headline on it. Your reaction to that?
Well, I do think the New York Times is taking him out of context. He was arguing only to use the military at the very last resort, and that's how a lot of Americans feel about it. Nobody wants to see the military. And not
against protesters. Wait. He didn't say use them against. He didn't say use them against protesters. He didn't say that. He said to back up police during the looting and the arson. Go ahead.
Right, and that's what's so frustrating. Conservatives, including myself, have been very careful not to differentiate between the peaceful protesters and the rioters. And Tom Cotton tried to do the same in this op-ed. And what we see are liberal news organizations trying to conflate the two to make conservatives look bad. You really shouldn't have to agree with Tom Cotton's op-ed to see the problem here, to see how dishonest this is, and honestly dangerous for the whole institution of journalism.
Kelsey, thank you so much for coming on. Come back soon. We love having you on.
Thank you.